Hello everyone, this is Muhammad Wasim Khan, an instructor for your course Human Resource Management. Welcome to Learn with Wasim. In today's lecture, we will talk about pay for performance and financial incentives. This lecture will have two parts. So let's begin with the first part of the lecture. The learning objective of this lecture are to explain how you would apply 5 motivation theories in formulating an incentive plan. We will discuss the main incentives for individual employees. We will also discuss the pros and cons of commissions versus straight pay incentives for salespeople. Moreover, we will describe the main incentive for managers and executives, and we will also name and define the most popular organization-wide variable pay plans. And at the end, we will outline the steps in designing effective incentive plans. Let's start with money and motivation. Frederick Taylor popularized using financial incentives, that is, financial rewards paid to workers whose production exceeds some predetermined standard in the late 1800s. As a supervisor at the Mid Valley Steel Company, uh, Taylor was concerned with what he called systematic soldiering. Systematic soldiering is actually the tendency of employees to work at the slowest pace possible and to produce at the minimum acceptable level. What especially intrigued him was the fact that some of these workers had the energy to run home and work on their houses even after a 12-hour day. Taylor knew that if he could harness this energy at work, Midvalley could achieve huge productivity plans. Productivity gains I am talking about. So what actually the productivity is? Uh, Productivity is actually the ratio of output to input, or we can say output divided by input is equal to productivity. And output can be the goods and services, and inputs can be the resources such as labor and capital. Today, incentive pay, tying workers' pay to their performance, is widely popular. The problem is that doing so is easier said than done. Many such programs are ineffective, and some are disastrous. As logical as it seems to link pay to performance, about 83% of the companies with such programs say their programs are at best somewhat successful. One study found that just 28% of the 2,600 United States workers it surveyed said their company's incentive plans motivated them. Employees don't see a strong connection between pay and performance, and their performance is not particularly influenced by the company's incentive plan. Equally problematic is the fact that some incentive excuse me some incentives incentivize the wrong behavior and performance. Thus, simply incentivizing number of cars sold in a dealership might produce high performance in case of the number of cars sold, but a low per car profit. Okay, so we will see that there are many reasons for incentive plans often dismissal results. Many employers, perhaps ignorant of Taylor and history, change their plan standard arbitrarily. Others ignore the fact that incentive pay that may motivate some people won't motivate others. Compensation experts therefore argue that managers should understand the motivational basis of incentive plans. Okay, so let's talk about some of the 5 motivational theories in formulating an incentive plan. Basically, we will actually talk about 6 different theories here. Okay, so these are some of the motivational theories that we will discuss one by one. The first one is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The second one is Herberg's two-factor theory. The third one is reinforcement theory. We will also talk about equity theory. We will discuss expectancy theory and theory X and Y. So let's start with Maslow hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow propounded one widely quoted observation on what motivates people. Although lacking such scientific support, his theory is widely quoted. He said that people have a hierarchy of 5 needs that you can see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he said that people have a hierarchy of 5 needs. Psychological, that include the food, water, and warmth. Okay, security, mean a secure income, knowing one has a job. Social, like friendships, um, self-esteem or self-respect, and actualization. Self-actualization means that the person believe they're becoming the person you believe you can become. So according to Maslow's propensity process principle, people are motivated first to satisfy each lower order need, and then in sequence each of the higher level need. For example, if someone is out of work and insecure, getting a job may drive everything he or she does. Okay, so during periods of high unemployment, one may see even former executives taking low-level jobs to make ends meet. A secure employee may then turn to being concerned with building friendships, getting respect, and going to school to get the degree required to be a top executive. On the other hand, uh, don't try to motivate someone with more challenging work if he or she does not earn enough to pay the bills. So we usually envision Maslow's hierarchy of 5 needs as a step ladder or a pyramid that you can see here in front of you. Okay, the next theory, motivational theory, is the motivators and Frederick Herberg. Okay, a two-factor theory. So here we will discuss the Herberg's two-factor theory and Dacian motivators combinedly. Okay, Frederick Herberg said the best way to motivate someone is to organize the job so that doing it provide the feedback and challenge that helps satisfy the person's higher level needs for things like accomplishment and recognition. These needs are relatively insatiable, so recognition and challenging work provide a sort of built-in motivation generator. Satisfying lower level needs for things like better pay and working conditions just keeps the person from becoming dissatisfied. Herberg says the factors hygiene that satisfy lower level needs are different from those factors like motivators that satisfy or partially satisfy higher level needs. If hygiene factor, uh, the factors that is outside the job itself, such as working condition, salary, and incentive pay, uh, are inadequate, employees become dissatisfied. Okay, so if this one is inadequate, then employees become dissatisfied. However, adding more of these hygienes like incentives to the jobs uh, is an inferior way to try to motivate someone, because lower level needs are quickly satisfied. Soon the person simply says, in effect, what have you done for me lately? I want another raise. Okay, so instead of relying on hygienes, says Herzberg, managers interested in creating a self-motivated workforce should emphasize job content or motivator factors. Managers do this by enriching workers' jobs so that the jobs are more challenging, and by providing feedback and recognition, that is, they make doing the job intrinsically motivating, in other words. So, in organizational psychology, intrinsic motivation, um, you know, uh, is a motivation that derives from the pleasure someone gets from doing the job or task. So it comes from within the person rather than from some externally applied motivator, such as bosses, order, or financial incentive plan. When one is intrinsically motivated, just doing the job or task provide the motivation. Among other things, Herberg's theory makes the point that relying exclusively on financial incentives is risky. The employer should also provide the recognition and challenging work the most people that actually desire. So I hope this one is, you understood the first two theories. Let's start discuss the reinforcement theory. Uh, Behaviorist theory by Skinner. B.F. Skinner, was one of the most influential of American psychologists, obviously. As a behaviorist, he developed the theory of operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is actually the idea that behavior is determined by its consequences, be they reinforcement or punishment, which make it more or less likely that the behavior will occur again. Skinner believed that the only scientific approach to psychology was one that studied behaviors, not internal or subjective mental processes. They believe that all behaviors result from external stimuli, and people goals are determined by the desire to achieve pleasure and avoid the pain. Okay, so here actually we are talking about the behavior of a person. Okay, so the consequence actually, the behavior is actually determined by the consequences. Okay, so this was actually one of the reinforcement theory. Let's discuss the equity theory. Uh, Equity theory is used for keeping employees motivated. Everyone in the workplace is motivated by something. This motivation could be external in nature, such as money um, and status, or internal, such as a desire to do a good job. Leaders and managers have sought to understand theories of motivation and then test them in the workplace to increase the productivity and effectiveness of their workforce. Equity theory is actually based on the idea that individuals are motivated by fairness. Okay, in simple terms, equity theory states that if an individual identifies an inequity between themselves and a peer, they will adjust the work they do to make the situation fair in their eyes. Okay, so as an example of equity theory, for example, if an employee learns that a peer, okay, or that a colleague doing exactly the same job as them is earning more money, then they may choose to do less work, and thus creating a fairness in their eyes. Okay, so this was actually equity theory. Let's discuss an expectancy theory. uh, Another important motivational fact is that in general, people won't pursue rewards they find unattractive or where the odds of success are very low. Psychologists Victor Vroom's expectancy motivational theory echoes these common sense observations. He says a person's motivations to exert some level of effort depends on three things. The first one is, uh, a person's expectancy in terms of probability that his or her effort will lead to performance. The second one is instrumentality or perceived connection, between successful performance and actually obtaining the rewards. And the third one is valence, which represent the perceived value the person attaches to the reward. So there are these three things actually. So motivation is actually the multiplication of these three things. Okay, expectancy. E is expectancy, I is instrumentality, and V is valence. So if E or I or V is zero or inconsequential, then obviously there will be no motivation. Mathematically, if I I would like to explain it mathematically in a way that, for example, if either E or I or V is zero, then anything multiplied with zero would be equal to zero. For example, V is zero, so zero into I is zero, and zero into E is zero. So motivation will be zero. Okay. Um, Vroom's theory has three implications for how managers design incentive plan. Uh, First is that if employees don't expect that effort will produce performance, no motivation will occur, obviously. So managers must ensure that their employees have the skills to do the job and believe they can do the job. Thus, training, job description, and confidence building and support are important, in using incentives. Second is that Bloom's theory suggests that employees must see the instrumentality of their efforts. They must believe that successful performance will in fact lead to getting the reward. Managers can accomplish this, for instance, by creating easy to understand incentive plans. And the third one is the reward itself must be value to the employee. Ideally, the manager should take into account individual employee preference. And the last one is theory X and theory Y. What do you think motivates your people to come to work each morning, for example? Okay. Let me ask you again the same question. What do you think motivates your people to come to work each morning? Okay. Uh, I'll explain my question that what are the things that can motivate your people at work each morning, according to you? Okay. Do you believe that they get great satisfaction from their work and take pride in doing the best possible job? Or do you think that they see it as a burden and simple work for the money? These assumptions actually about your team members can have a significant influence on how you manage them. Uh, in 1960s, social psychologist Douglas McGregor developed two contrasting theories that explained how managers' beliefs about what motivates their people can affect their management style. Uh, he labeled these theory X and theory Y. These theories continue to be important even today. Um, Theory X and theory Y were first explained by McGregor in his book The Human Side of Enterprise. Okay, the book was Human Side of Enterprise, and they refer to two styles of management. One was authoritarian style of management, and another was participative style of management. If you believe that your team members dislike their work and have little motivation, then according to McGregor, you will likely use an authoritarian style of management. I'll repeat it again. If you believe that your team members dislike their work and have little motivation, so McGregor says that you will likely use an authoritarian style of management. This approach is very hands-on and usually involves micromanaging people's work to ensure that it gets done properly. And McGregor called this theory a theory X. On the other hand, if you believe that your people take pride in their work and see it as a challenge, then you will more likely to adopt a participative style of management. Managers who use this approach trust their people to take ownership of their work and do it effectively by themselves. And McGregor called this theory a theory Y. The approach that you will have that you take will have a significant impact on your ability to motivate your team members. So it's important to understand how your perceptions of what motivates them can shape your management style. Okay, so actually the style of management or management style depend on the I would say the behavior of your employees. Okay, so that's all about the 5 basic motivational theories. We will now move toward the motivation and incentives. Uh, in motivation and incentives, we will discuss the behavior modification, incentive pay terminology, and employee incentives and the law. We will discuss these three, one by one. Let's move toward the behavior modification first. Using incentives, also assumes, something about how consequences affect behavior. Psychologist Skinner findings provide the psychologist Skinner's findings actually provide the foundation for much of what we know about this. Managers apply Skinner's principle by using behavior modification. Behavior modification mean changing behavior through uh, rewards or punishment that are contingent on performance. For managers, behavior modification boils down to two main principles. The first one is that behavior appears to lead to a positive consequence, such as reward, and that tends to be repeated. Whereas behavior that appears to lead to a negative consequence, that can be punishment, that tends to not be repeated. And second, that therefore managers can get someone to change his or her behavior by providing the properly scheduled rewards. Okay, the second one is incentive pay terminology. Managers often use two terms synonymously with incentive plans. Traditionally, all incentive plans are pay for performance plans. Okay, they all tie employees' pay to the performance of employees. Variable pay is more specific. That is usually an incentive plan that ties a group or team's pay to some measure of the firm's overall profitability. Profit sharing is one example. Variable pay is advantageous insofar as it reduces an employer's fixed pay, so that if sales or performance dips, pays disciplines too. However confusing as it may be, some experts have used the term variable pay to include incentive plans for individual employees. Um, the third one is employee incentives and the law. Okay, let me discuss all of the three, combinedly. Behavior modification means changing behavior through rewards or punishment that are contingent on performance. Okay. As we said, that incentive pay terminology, it is usually an incentive plan that ties a group or teams pay to some measure of the firm's overall profitability or profit sharing plans. Okay. And employee incentives in the law, if incentive is in the form of prize or cash reward, the employer generally must include the value of that award when calculating the workers' overtime pay for that pay period. Okay. Okay. Let's discuss incentives for individual employees. Individual employee incentive and recognition programs. Here we will discuss the piecework plans, that is the straight piecework and standard hour plans and their pros and cons. And we will also discuss the merit pay as an incentive. Here we will discuss the two most important points, that is the differential pay increases and merit pay options. Let's first discuss the piecework plans. Piecework plan is actually the oldest and yes, still most popular individual incentive plan. Under a piecework plan, an employee is paid a certain amount of money per unit produced. Okay, so under a piecework plan, an employee is paid a certain amount of money per unit produced. For example, Sana is paid $20 for each suit she completes. If she completes 10 suits in one day, she is paid $200. If $20 for one suit, then obviously for 10 suits, she's paid $200 for that particular day. Sometimes employees are paid a base pay along with the piecework rate. Okay. Uh, Here we will discuss the straight piecework, and in the next slide we will discuss the standard hours plan. Let's discuss the straight piecework first. Straight piecework is an incentive plan in which a person is paid a sum for each item he or she makes or sells, with a strict proportionality between results and rewards. So actually in the in piecework plans, we have discussed that an employee is paid a certain amount of money per unit produced. Okay, so in a straight piecework, a person is paid a sum for each item he or she makes or sells, with a strict proportionality between results and rewards. It entails a strict proportionality between results and rewards, regardless of the output. Regardless of the output. So you should note this point that the proportionality between results and rewards, regardless of output. However, some piecework plans allow for sharing productivity gains between employer and worker. Here, the worker receives some extra income for some above normal production. Okay, so this is actually the straight piecework. Standard hour plans. A standard hour system is actually an incentive scheme in which the standard time in terms of hours is set for the completion of a job. So here actually is in this incentive plan, the standard time in terms of hours is set for the completion of job. The rate per hour is then determined. The standard hour system is also called 100% gains sharing system. Okay, under this method, the worker is paid for a standard time irrespective of whether the job is completed in the standard time or less. This means that worker is paid the same wages even if the time spent is more than the standard hours, unless he or she is guaranteed the time wages. Okay, so this is actually the standard hours plan. Let's discuss the pros and cons of the piecework plan. uh, Piecework plans are understandable, appear equitable in principle, and can be, powerful incentives since rewards are proportionate to performance. But from the time of Keller, managers have seen piecework's disadvantages. Workers on piecework may resist even justified attempts to raise production standards because workpiece plans usually tie incentive pay to quantity produced. Employees may well downplay quality or resist switching from job to job. Attempts to introduce new technology or process may trigger resistance for much the same reasons. Let's discuss the merit is an incentive. So as we have already discussed that in this here we will discuss the piecework plan and merit pay. Okay, so in piecework plan we have discussed the straight piecework and standard hour plans and their pros and cons, like their advantages and disadvantages. Now we are going to discuss merit pay as an incentive with differential pay increases and merit pay options respectively. Okay. Merit pay is an incentive. Merit pay or a merit raise is any salary increase the firm awards to an individual employee based on his or her individual performance. It is different from a bonus in that it usually becomes part of the employee's base salary, whereas a bonus is one-time payment. Okay, let me repeat it again for you so that you can understand it easily. Um, Merit pay is also called actually the merit raise, and it is any salary increase the firm awards to an individual employee based on a person's individual performance. Uh, it is different from the bonus. Uh, you know that it usually becomes a part of the employee's base salary. Okay, merit pay is is a part of employee's base salary, whereas a bonus is one-time payment. Although the term merit pay, can apply to the incentive raises given to any employee. The term is more often used for white-collar employees and particularly professionals, office and clerical employees. Okay, so merit pay is the subject of much debate. Advocates argue that awarding pay raises across the board may actually detract, from performance by showing employees that they will be rewarded regardless of how they perform. Okay, so it is, a long debate, but actually the main purpose of here is to tell you what actually the peace work plan and merit pay is. Okay, so that's it for now. Inshallah, in the next part of the lecture, we will discuss the pros and cons of commissioned versus, straight pay incentives for sales people. Uh, Till then, thank you and bye bye.